Looking at copyright law and intellectual property, this is an example. It says question 6. In your exam, this is most likely to be question 6, so kind of near the end of the paper. You don't get played music for this one. This is one of the only ones where you don't get played music. So this is a good example. In this question, an intellectual property case study will be read to you. Follow the text below. There will be no music played. So the example here is a band called The Hollies versus Radiohead. So you'll get these two bits of text. The case, The Hollies claimed that the alternative rock band Radiohead's 1992 hit song Creep had glaring familiarities with their 1972 hit Air That I Breathe in the form of chord sequence used. Now it's really hard to kind of copyright a chord sequence because chord sequences, particularly for pop and rock songs, aren't that complicated, and it's very, very, very common for bands to use very similar chord sequences. However, in this case, the Hollies clearly thought that they had a case and that Radiohead had stolen part of their idea, their composition. So the outcome of the case was Radiohead released their debut album Pablo Honey, on which Creep is featured. In the liner notes, so in your little CD leaflet, Radiohead credit Albert Hammond and Mike Hazelwood of the Hollies, providing them with a cut of the royalties for the song. So again, like if we refer back to our first video when we were talking about credit and royalties, so they credit Albert Hammond and Mike Hazelwood, so the composers of the original song by the Hollies, and providing them with a cut of the royalties of the song, which means that any money that song makes from either downloads or CD sales or any other kind of money that song makes, a portion of that, a small portion, but a portion of that will go to Albert Hammond and Mike Hazelwood. So they will get financial remuneration for their work. So question reads on, you now have 5 minutes to answer the question below. A warning tone will sound 30 seconds before the next question starts. So you've got 3 sections of the question to answer. So section A, explain in simple terms why the Hollies had a case against Radiohead. B, explain why Radiohead credited the Hollies in their album sleeve. And then C, tick one box to identify what should have been done to prevent copyright infringement. So you've got the 4 options there. Radiohead should not have been allowed to release or sell their song. The original copyright holders should have been asked permission to use the material. Radiohead should have changed the key their song was in, and then 20 years had passed, so copyright was not necessary. So that is your question. Now, while I get the answers up, you should pause this video and try and answer that. Make sure you write it down. If you're just thinking answers to yourself, it's not going to be as effective. So write it down, try and solidify your ideas while you've paused, and I'll get the answers up. Right, go. Okay, right, so the answers are here. In terms of question A, explain in simple terms why the Hollies had a case against Radiohead. The answer is the Hollies had a case against Radiohead because the chord sequence they used was the same or at least very similar to the one in the Hollies song. Similar enough to notice. It sounded like it had been copied and therefore was not original material to Radiohead. So it's a bit of a judgment call here, but essentially if it sounds like they've stolen that idea, then yeah, they need to pay either royalties or credit. Royalties isn't just giving the money. Royalties is always like a percentage of income that's of money that's made from that song. Answer to section B, explain why Radiohead credited the Hollies on their album sleeve. Radiohead credited the Hollies in their album sleeve to acknowledge the similarity of their work and that the Hollies had copyrighted their original material. So they gave them credit, they gave them royalties because they had stolen something that had been copyrighted. Now, there's a chance that it was complete fluke that they happened to match that exact same chord sequence, but in this instance, it's been judged to be unlikely. An answer to question C, so the correct answer is the original copyright holders should have been asked permission to use the material, which is true. So they had something that was the same or incredibly similar to the composition by the Hollies, and they didn't ask permission, so that's why they needed to get permission first, so that's the correct thing to do. The incorrect answer, so Radiohead should have not been allowed to release or sell their song. No, if they've got permission, then it's fine for them to release or sell the song, but again, as long as they've got permission. Radiohead should have changed the key their song was in. Makes no difference whatsoever. If they change the key their song was in, unless they change that specific chord sequence or the feel of it or something else significant about it, makes no difference. 20 years have passed, so copyright was not necessary. So copyright lasts much longer than 20 years. I think it's off the top of my head, I think it's 70 years that copyright lasts for, and then it will then pass to the next of kin or somebody else. So it's quite a long time before copyright expires and it's in the public domain.